Silver Spring, Maryland. December 9, 2022. 5:47 a.m. A SWAT team is outside an apartment door. They're there for a murder. A convenience store clerk, shot dead the night before. Surveillance cameras caught the whole thing. They know exactly who did it. They know exactly where he lives. They breach the door. They find him, sleeping on a bare mattress on the kitchen floor. No sheets, just a mattress. They cuff him. And then 2 officers walk into the bedroom. One officer sees something on the floor. A comforter, a large shape underneath it. He yells, "Show me your hands." His partner reaches down and lifts the blanket. What they found under that blanket is what this story is really about. Before I tell you what happened in that apartment, I need you to know who Denise Middleton was. Denise was 26 years old. She was the kind of person who walked into a room and immediately started making people feel better about themselves. Her family said she was a walking book of positive affirmations. If you were having a bad day, Denise noticed. She'd say something. She'd find a way to lift you. She was also, at the time this story takes place, 8.5 months pregnant. 38 weeks. Almost there. She had already named her son Ezekiel. She had picked out a onesie for him. Police found it later hanging in the bedroom closet. A tiny onesie for a baby that was weeks away from being born. I keep coming back to that onesie. I don't know why that detail hits harder than anything else in this case, but it does. The father of that baby, the man whose apartment that closet was in, was Torrey Moore. Torrey Moore had a history of domestic violence. October 9, 2022, 7 p.m. The surveillance cameras at the Enclave Apartments on Oak Leaf Drive captured Torrey Moore and Denise Middleton walking into the lobby together. Prosecutors described what those cameras showed. Moore grabbing Denise, pushing her toward the elevator. They get in. In the elevator, Denise moves to the far corner. Away from him, she turns slightly toward the wall. She's wiping her eyes. The prosecutor told the jury, whatever was going on was not good. The elevator doors open on their floor. Denise follows Moore out, so slowly that the doors almost close on her. That's the last image anyone ever captured of Denise Middleton alive. Approximately 1 hour later, the same elevator camera picks up Torrey Moore, coming back down, alone. He walks out of the building. And over the next 26 days, cell phone data shows he traveled across the country. North Carolina, California, moving around. And during that time, while he was on the road, Torrey Moore opened his phone and searched Google. How long does it take for a dead body to smell? How to move a dead body without being seen? How to plead insanity? That third search, that's the one that tells you everything. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't falling apart. He was thinking ahead, planning, calculating his options. And then, after 26 days, he came back. He came back to that apartment, with Denise still there, and he lived there for weeks. December 8, 2022, almost 2 months after Denise was killed. Torrey Moore walks into the Dash-In convenience store on New Hampshire Avenue, the same store he had previously been banned from. 61-year-old Ilu Wundamu is behind the counter. Wundamu was an immigrant, a hard worker, a man who showed up every day and did his job. Moore picks up a bottle of pure leaf iced tea, walks to the register. An argument breaks out over the tea. Moore reaches into his vest pocket, pulls out a semi-automatic pistol, shoots Wundamu twice as he falls to the ground, then walks around the counter, leans over and fires several more rounds down, picks up the iced tea, walks out. Honestly, and I've covered a lot of cases, that detail, the iced tea, something about that detail makes this feel even colder than it already is. Within hours, police had Moore on surveillance footage. They traced him to the Enclave Apartments, right across the street. SWAT moved in before sunrise, December 9th, 5:47 a.m. And that's where we started. The bare mattress, the cuffed hands, and the bedroom. I'm going to be careful here about how I describe what officers found. Not because I'm protecting you from the truth, but because Denise Middleton deserves more than to be described as a crime scene. What I will tell you is this. She had been there for over 60 days. She had been shot 7 times. And in that bedroom closet hung a small onesie. For Ezekiel. The prosecutor later stood in front of a jury and said, they were prepared to find Torrey Moore inside that apartment. But what they weren't prepared for was to find the rotting corpse of Denise Middleton on the floor of the defendant's bedroom. Denise Middleton, who was 8.5 months pregnant. The building had no idea. Neighbors had no idea. Moore had been coming and going, living his life, going to the store, walking through the lobby, for 60 days. That's the part one can't get past. Not the crime itself, as horrific as it is, but the 60 days after. The absolute normalcy of it. That's what keeps me up. The legal process here was long, and it wasn't simple. Moore was initially found mentally unfit to stand trial. He was sent for psychiatric evaluation. 6 months later, competent. Cleared to face charges. 2 separate juries. 2 separate trials. May 2024, first jury. Guilty. First-degree murder of Ilu Wundamu. November 2024, second jury. And this one made history. Guilty of 2 counts of first-degree murder. 1 for Denise. 1 for Ezekiel. It was the first time in Montgomery County history that someone had been convicted for the murder of a viable, unborn fetus. To me, that conviction matters beyond the legal technicality, because it meant that a court of law looked at this case and said, Ezekiel existed. His life counted. He had a name. And what was done to him was murder. Sentencing came in June 2025. 3 consecutive life sentences, plus 80 additional years. Moore sat through the entire hearing without a word. No explanation. No statement. Nothing. And then Denise's father stood up. Dennis Middleton. And he said 7 words. I'd really like to hear. Why? That's it. That's the whole thing. 7 words that no verdict, no sentence, no courtroom can ever answer. Days away from meeting Ezekiel. And yet, for 60 days, the world didn't know she was gone. That's not just a detail about Torrey Moore's behavior. That's a question worth asking about how we treat women, especially pregnant women, in relationships with a history of violence. And I'm not saying the system failed Denise because I don't know the full picture. But I do think cases like this force us to ask, what does it take for someone to disappear? And for the world to not notice for 2 months? Torrey Moore will spend the rest of his life in prison. 3 lives taken. 3 consecutive life sentences. Ilu Wundamu, who just showed up to work that day. Denise Middleton, who was almost a mother. And Ezekiel, who never got a chance to be anything at all. Rest in peace, Denise. Rest in peace, Ezekiel. The historic fetal murder conviction in this case opened up a legal conversation that's still happening across the country. I want to know what you think about it. Do you think that conviction was the right call? Or does it complicate things legally? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Seriously, I read every single one. The comment section on these videos is always the most interesting part. And if you made it this far, you already know if this channel is for you. Subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.